Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name's Tony Macaulay. I'm the author of a memoir called Paperboy, which was adapted for the stage by BYMT in 2018-2019, and a wonderful production written by Duke Special and Andrew Doyle, and fantastic performers from BYMT 2 years in a row in the Lyric Theatre in Belfast. And so I'm delighted to be with you this afternoon for this webinar on finding your voice as a writer. And so welcome. I'm going to explain what we're going to be doing over the next hour or so. I'm going to begin by explaining, first of all, how I became a writer and how I came to have my books published. I thought you might find that interesting if you're interested in writing and the process of writing and perhaps how to get a book published. And then I'm going to read a section from my memoir Paperboy, which was one of the first parts actually of the book that I wrote. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to do a writing exercise together, which is designed to help you to find your voice as a writer. So you're going to be doing a little bit of writing. Now, don't worry about it. It's just fun. It's not like school where someone's going to be marking your work or giving you marks. I'm going to ask everyone, I'm going to give you a little exercise to do. I'm going to ask everyone to start to do a little bit of writing, and then I'll have a little look. I'll be the only one who'll be able to see what you've written in your chat. And then at the end of that, if some people would like to share some of what they've written, I'd love to hear some of those as well. And then we're going to finish up with a Q&A session where there'll be an opportunity for you to ask me any questions that you have about writing, and I'd be very happy to answer those questions. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be interactive. So it's not just going to be me talking all the time. When we get into the exercise, you're going to be doing some writing, and then hopefully we'll hear from some of you as well. I think that's very exciting. I'm always excited to hear people who may be enjoying writing for the first time to share some of their work. So the first thing, as I said, was I was going to tell you, first of all, how I became a writer. And so when I was at school, probably the same age as many of you, I really enjoyed writing. And my favorite subject at school was English. And and I always got good feedback at school from my English teachers about writing. It was something that I always enjoyed. But when I left school, I went to university, and I became, I got involved in my work, which, as you may know, I became involved in peace building and conflict resolution, first of all in Northern Ireland, and then in other parts of the world that have experienced conflict. When I started to do that sort of work, I then, during that time, I didn't write creatively for many, many years. I wrote lots of reports, and I wrote strategies and evaluations of programs, and I did a lot of writing, and I actually enjoyed that. But I didn't creatively write for many years, and in some ways I regret that. That I really, probably from the age of about 20 to the age of about 40, I stopped writing, and I sort of regret that a little bit now. But now I've started again. You can't stop me. So what happened was, about 12 years ago now, my mother was moving house, and she found my old school reports that she had kept over all these years, and she asked me if I wanted them. So I had a look through them, and I saw interesting comments from my maths teacher, could do better. I saw other interesting comments from my physics teacher, it doesn't work hard enough. But in all of my school reports, from primary school 1 right up to sixth form, I had these really nice comments from my English teachers. So that was 12 years ago. And interestingly, I had just finished studying for an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration, for my work. And I had studied through the Open University. And if you don't know the Open University, it has a long tradition of distance learning. Even before we were able to learn using technology like this, the Open University did distance learning courses so that people could do part-time degrees and masters. And I had completed my Master's in Business Administration, and I was sort of a little bit hungry to do something else. I wanted to learn something, and I enjoyed that way of learning. So I looked through just at the time I'd been looking at these school reports, I was looking through the prospectus of the Open University to see if there was anything I wanted to study. And I thought, well, why don't I just do something for fun, not necessarily that I need for my work. So I noticed they did some creative writing courses. And I signed up for two. And one of the courses I did poetry, and I did a little bit of fiction, and I did what they called on the course life writing. And it was really during the course of doing an assignment on life writing that my tutor gave me very good feedback about my writing, my life writing, which was about my memories of being a boy, a 12-year-old boy growing up in Belfast in the 1970s during the Troubles. And she suggested that I actually should write more about that. And so I started to write a little bit more about that. And eventually I had the idea, what about if I write the story of just those few years when I was 12 years old and I was actually a paper boy at that time? Why don't I just write about those 2 years of my childhood, life in Belfast in the 1970s as a paper boy? So eventually I did that, and I ended up maybe with 6 or 7 chapters. And I had the courage, eventually plucked up the courage to send it to a couple of publishers, one in Northern Ireland and one in the south of Ireland in Dublin. And to my surprise, the publishers in Dublin came back to me almost immediately and said, could you send us some more? Now, at this stage, I hadn't written any more because I wasn't sure if this was any good and anyone would want to read it, certainly if anyone would want to publish it. So that got me writing more, and I wrote a little bit more and sent it to them. And eventually they invited me to Dublin. And when I got to Dublin, they told me they had sent it to a literature critic in one of the Irish newspapers who really enjoyed it. And they asked me, and they told me they loved it and they wanted to publish it. So I was absolutely thrilled and delighted. And I remember the journey home on the train. I couldn't stop writing because I got this confidence boost that they told me they liked my writing, they wanted to publish my book, and they thought it was good. So really, that's how my writing career began. And Paperboy was at first published. I'm going to actually, the copy I have today, it is the original first edition. These are very rare now. This was the first edition, which was published by this small publisher in Dublin in 2009. And then that publisher closed down, and another small publisher published it the next year in 2010, again just in Ireland. But then they sold it to HarperCollins, which is obviously a major international publisher, and they've since published Paperboy around the world. And so basically that was the beginning of my career as a writer, and it has all taken off for me ever since then in the past 10 years. Paperboy was published 10 years ago, and as you know, it's been adapted into a musical with BYMT, and that's been a huge success. And it's also currently in development as a movie. And actually just yesterday, they were announcing, the producers were announcing who some of the cast are for some of the key parts of my parents in the movie version of Paperboy. So it's been quite a roller coaster for me, from sitting down and just wanting to have a bit of fun doing a creative writing course to writing a book, which ultimately became successful and has been translated to the stage and the screen. So that's really the story, briefly, the story of how I became a writer. You can, if you have any questions about that at the end, please ask me those later on in the Q&A. And but what I thought I would do next is I would read you that section from Paperboy that I did as an assignment on my creative writing course. And once I've done that, I'm going to explain how I end up writing on that subject matter, because I'm going to ask you to do the same exercise that I did that resulted in me writing Paperboy. Okay, so I'm going to read this section from Paperboy. Just a little section about, it's 1975 and I'm 12 years old, and I'm going for my guitar lessons. And I go for guitar lessons every Friday night. And the guitar lessons are paid for by my Paperboy wages and my Paperboy tips. And so there's a close connection between me being a Paperboy and me learning to play the guitar. After my extended guitar lesson at the Ryings that windy winter night, I ran the short distance home through the spitting rain, with the tune of Love Me Tender repeating itself irritatingly in my head. I sped past Titch McCracken, who was desperately trying to light a sly cigarette in the wind behind Mrs. Patterson's hydrangea. Overhead droned a noisy British Army helicopter, keeping an eye on West Belfast. Before the Troubles, I had never seen a real helicopter, apart from the one that Skippy the Bush Kangaroo on UTV would alert to save a boy who had fallen down a disused mine shaft in Australia. But now helicopters were an ever-present whir, looking down on us, their searchlights shining on targeted streets to illuminate any wrongdoing. This heavenly super trooper was in fact one of the more enjoyable experiences of 1970s Belfast, at least for me and other boys like me. The boom of bombs pummeled the marrow in my growing bones. The deadly staccato sound of gunfire ripped at my tender heart. But the nighttime sight of a helicopter searchlight rushing up your street until you were standing in quasi-daylight was as exhilarating as the roller coaster at Barry's Amusements on the Sunday school excursion to Bangor. It was the most exciting thing to go up our street, apart from the ice cream man, the UGA, and the Ormo mini shop. On the fateful night in question, coming home from my guitar lesson, I looked up to see the searchlight flicker across the disrespectful blue-black sky. Reaching the rickety front gate of our house, I halted as the light leapt up the street towards me, and all at once I was illuminated in its full, stark glare. The rays reflected off the rusty gate I had tried to paint over for 30p for the Scouts during Bob a Job week. I hope they don't think my Spanish guitar is a machine gun from up there, I suddenly thought. For a moment, I imagined a new boy having to take over my paper round the next day, delivering Belfast telegraphs with the headline, 12-year-old terrorist with suspicious instrument shot dead. We weren't allowed toy guns or fireworks in case they got us shot in Belfast. But I had never considered that carrying a Spanish guitar could transform me into a legitimate target. Blinded by the light and distracted by all of this catastrophizing, I was unprepared for the impact. The malicious wind blew the steel gate into my defenseless wee guitar. I heard the crack. I knew it was serious. The guitar was covered by a soft blue pretend leather case that my aunt had bought me for my birthday. The hard guitar cases used by professionals were too dear to be sold in the club book, even over 60 weeks. This soft blue case kept the rain off my Spanish guitar, but it lacked the rigidity required to protect the vulnerable instrument from damage. I couldn't see inside just yet, but I knew already that my precious guitar had been seriously wounded. When I finally got indoors, I saw a big crack in my guitar, which ran from head to bridge. I cried. Of course, my father did his fix-it best with glue he had borrowed from the foundry. But I had to come to terms with the fact that my guitar was permanently fractured. There was nothing I could do. It would always be split. Sadly, just like Belfast would be all my life. I yearned for things to be different, but I couldn't envisage it any other way. From that night on, there was a new melancholy in my rendition of Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley, when I played it on my guitar and my guitar. So that's a little reading from chapter 3 of Paperboy. And as I said, the birth of that section of the book was in the creative writing course that I did 12 years ago. And actually, the content in that section came from the exercise that we're going to do together now. And so just to introduce the exercise, I want to give you 3 tips, okay? 3 tips, which I think are really important in terms of developing as a writer, okay? So tip number 1, the first tip is develop a writing habit, okay? Often people come up to me at book readings and events and they tell me, oh, I'm a writer, but I never can, I have this idea and I can never get it started, or I've been writing this novel for years and I can never get it finished. And actually, I believe one of the most important things in writing is to find the time to write, to keep writing, and to complete your writing. I honestly believe there are many books that are much better than my books that have never been completed and will never be published. And I think that's really sad. And the reason that happens is because many writers find it difficult to develop a writing habit. So my first tip for you today is to develop a writing habit. And it's basically the time and the place and the amount of time when you will simply write. Not talk about writing, not think about writing, not read about writing, but actually write. There's nothing more important than simply writing. And it's interesting, a few years ago, I hosted a television program in Northern Ireland where I had the privilege of interviewing lots of writers about their latest books. And one of the questions I always asked them was about their writing habit. What is your writing habit? And everyone is different. So some people told me that they write late at night. So they don't start writing till like 11 o'clock at night and they write till like 2 a.m. in the morning. Other people told me they get up early and they write from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and they write really early in the morning. Other people say they don't have a regular pattern. They just write when they get the chance. For me personally, I used to write when I was writing Paperboy and my first few books, Breadboy and All Growed Up. I set aside 1 day a week to write, to do nothing but write. And my writing day was Monday. And I would have tended to it would have taken me like 2 Mondays to complete a chapter. And that was my writing habit then. But then when life got very busy with me, partly because I was traveling so much because of my writing, then I actually started to write on airplanes. If you're crossing the Atlantic and it's taking 8 hours and it's really very boring and there's no Wi-Fi, a really good way of passing the time is to write. And I'm one of those writers actually who likes to write in a public place. So I can write on a train or on an airplane or in a cafe. And that's kind of my writing habit now. The other method that I use now that I'm busy is writing retreat. So sometimes I'll go away for a week, and so that and usually it's out of the country or out of the way, a completely different place, so that I can't be distracted from anything else. So those are some examples of a writing habit. So think about what works for you. Think about where will you be most creative? Where's the best place for you to write? What's the time of the day that is the best time for you to write? What day of the week is the best day of the week for you? If you're busy writing, and studying at school or college, is there a different time of the day or a different day of the week that's a good time to set aside time for writing? And it doesn't matter how little time, any time at all. If it's 20 minutes a day, that's better than nothing. So think about that. That's my first tip, how you will develop your writing habit. And it's a bit like finding your own voice, which I'll talk about in a minute. Your writing habit is unique for you. So do what works for you. If you decide, you're going to, devote a particular time of the day or of the week to write and you end up not doing it, that's not working. Try something else. So that's my first tip, develop a writing habit. The second tip, which also relates to the exercise that we're going to do, is postpone perfection. Postpone perfection. So when you're writing, and when you're writing a book, it goes through many, many drafts. I probably couldn't tell you how many drafts my last book, Belfast Gate, went through before I was happy with it. And at some stage as a writer, you have to decide, okay, I could keep redrafting it for another year and it may only get, 1% better than it is at the minute. But part of writing is about revising and editing and improving. And so it's really important not to expect the first thing that you write down to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. And but you have time, and if you take time and patience, then over a period of time, then later you can perfect it. So the risk is that if you expect it to be perfect first time and you read it and you're not happy with it, then it can affect your confidence, or you can give up. I think that's the worst thing could happen. Never give up. Never give up with your writing. So that's the second point, postpone perfection. And I think part of the reason why perhaps we have a mindset that our writing must be perfect first time is it's possibly because of how we're educated, where we do exams, and often when we do written tests and written examinations at school, and for qualifications, often that's it's being marked and assessed, and we have to write, we have an hour to write that essay, for example, and so it has to be the best it can possibly be to get as many marks as possible to pass the exam. And I suppose that gets into our mindset sometimes, that we feel that writing has to be perfect on the very first go, because we're sort of conditioned a little bit to write in that way. I think sometimes also certainly my experience at school, which is obviously a long time ago compared to yours, was that when we were studying English literature, we were looking at great writers. So I remember, whether it was William Shakespeare or Jane Austen or Thomas Hardy, those are some of the ones that I remember studying at school. It was really, it was fantastic to read these amazing writers in English literature through history. But it was a mistake to think that I have to write like them if I want to be a writer. So I think sometimes one of the reasons that we maybe have a mindset of it has to be perfect is because our first experience sometimes of writing is brilliant writing. And we know when we start to do it that it's not brilliant to start with. So what I would say is that it's okay if it's not perfect. And so that's my second tip, postpone perfection. And the third tip, which relates to the exercise that we're all going to do shortly, is called, the third tip is find your own voice. Find your own voice. And that relates a little to what I was saying just a minute ago. You will have your own favorite writers, the writers whose books you just love. And maybe at school you'll have studied different writers and different types of literature, different books, different genres. There'll be the ones that you like. But even your favorite writer is not you. And what I learned very early on, actually when I was doing the creative writing course, was not to try to copy or mimic someone else's writing. Because when you try to do that, it tends to be a poor imitation. Because I am not that writer, and I will never be that writer. I don't have their experience of life. I don't think the way they think. I might love their writing, but I am not them. But the exciting thing about this is there is only one you. So no one else has your voice. Each of us, because of who we are and where we live and our background and our families and our history, all of that, all of us, every single person has a unique voice. And I think the most important thing to do as a writer is not to copy someone else's voice, but to find your own voice. And for me, one of the most exciting things that I did when I was starting out writing was to find my own voice. And I stopped writing in a way that I thought would impress people. I stopped using a lot of flowery descriptions that I thought would make me sound like the greats of English literature. And I just started to write in my own voice. And what's interesting for me is that's when it started to work for me, and that's what has been successful, because people have, in my books, have told me they enjoy hearing the voice of the boy. So my books are interesting in that my first 3 books were coming of age books, and in the first book, in Paperboy, I'm 12, so I didn't have to find my voice. I had to find my 12-year-old voice. I had tried to remember how I thought and saw the world when I was 12. And then when I did the sequel, Breadboy, I'm a teenager in Breadboy, and that was a different voice because I thought differently as a teenager. So I almost had to find my voice again in terms of when I was a teenager. And then the third one, in All Grown Up, I turned 18, and I had to find my young adult voice for that again. My most recent book is a novel at Belfast Gate, and in that I'm the narrator. It's fiction. So, but I have to find my own voice as a narrator as well. So finding your own voice is really, really important. And to me, if it's the one tip you take away from today's webinar, it is this one: find your own voice. Okay, so to help you to do that, we're going to do this exercise now. And the exercise, it's called free writing. Free writing. And the idea of free writing is it's to just free you up to find your voice as a writer. And when you do free writing, what basically happens is you just start writing for like 10, 15 minutes. Whatever comes into your head, whatever is in your head, and you notice what you're thinking, and and then you just start writing it, and then just see what comes out. And it's just surprising what comes out. You can't predict what's going to come out, but you just follow a line of thought, just whatever you're thinking, and you just start writing and just see what comes out. Postpone perfection. Doesn't have to be brilliant. Doesn't have to be perfect grammar. Doesn't have to have perfect spelling. It's not going to be marked by a teacher. It's just for you finding your voice and letting it flow. Just let your voice come through and your voice flow. And there are various ways of doing free writing, but I want today to use the technique that I used, which resulted in me writing that section of Paperboy that I read earlier. And it's called random word stimulation. Okay, random word stimulation. And what in my case, I was given a list of words, just a list of random words, and I had to choose one that I was drawn to, just the word that stood out for me, and then I started free writing along that word. And in my case, back then, 12 years ago, the word that I chose was guitar. So that whole book of Paperboy emerged from me starting to do some free writing based on the word guitar. And when I started doing this little exercise, I just started writing guitar, and then I remembered my little Spanish guitar, and then I remembered I was 12 years old, and I remembered the night it got cracked when the British Army helicopter shone its light on me, and I was frightened, and it was a windy night, and the gate slammed into the guitar and cracked it down the middle. I remembered that story and just started writing it. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. We're going to do the free writing exercise. So I'm going to explain the process. Now, this is fun, okay? I want you to enjoy this. I don't want to expect this to be perfect, but I do hope you have fun with it and find your voice in the middle of it, or even start to find your voice. That's the most important thing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 5 words, and I want you to choose the word that you're most drawn to. I'll read 5 words. Whichever one of these 5 words is most interesting to you, I want you to choose that word, okay? And I've chosen some words that are featured in the Paperboy musical. So they are guitar, newspaper, grandmother, concert, and robots, okay? So what I want you to do now is choose one of those words, whichever one is most interesting to you. I'll read them again. Guitar, newspaper, grandmother, concert, or robots. So choose your word. And what I want you to do is I want you simply to start writing in the chat, okay? I want you to write in the chat just the first thing that comes into your head, and just keep writing, stimulated by that word, okay? And if you, sometimes people say to me when I ask them to do this, but I can't think of anything. Well, that's what you're thinking then. Start writing, I can't think of anything. Why can I not think of anything? Write whatever comes in to your head, okay? And I want you to just start writing in the chat. No one else can see what you're writing in the chat apart from me and Tatiana and BYMT. So no one else is seeing what you're doing. And okay, no one else can see it. So this is just for you, okay? You know, we may decide at the end of this, if people are interested, we may decide on sort of compiling some of these if you want to do that. But just for now, this is not a test. It's not for anyone else. It's just for you to help you find your voice. So thank you very much for doing the exercise. I can see, my goodness, you've just let the free writing go. Grandmother seems popular as far as I can see. But it's interesting, you know, yeah, there's a few examples of all of the people using all the different words. So who would like to share what you've read? I'd really love to hear some of these. So who would like to share? So if you'd like to share, could you put your hand up, please? And let's hear some of these wonderful pieces of writing. Oh, here we have. Let me see. So, okay. Alaska Hilton. Hello, Alaska. Can you hear me? Can you unmute, please? Yeah.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Alaska. That's great. Would you like to read yours, please?
Okay.
Great.
It was my first time in the newspaper. Even though it was the local South African community newspaper called The Sun, it was my biggest achievement in my small career. I can clearly remember watching Hannah Montana one hot evening when I was 7 years old, and that's when it clicked. I wanted to be a singer. For the next few years, I trained and worked so hard to become this image that I always wanted to be. I remember all the interviews I had taken part in, and I started to feel like I was really getting somewhere. Little did I know that the entire career I had been building for 8 years would all crash in a single second.
You see, you left me wanting more there. I want to know what happened next. Excellent. Well done. That's great. Thanks for sharing, Alaska. Yeah, and you know, as I'll say to everyone, if you want to, you know, obviously you don't need 12 minutes. You can do more free writing on that, and then you might leave it for a while and then come back to it and work on it and make it a little piece of writing. So well done. Thank you. What about who's next? Niamh Gallagher. Niamh, would you like to share yours?
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's a great Irish name, Niamh.
Hey.
So go ahead and share us yours.
It's really long, I'm sorry.
That's
Is that
okay.
all right?
That's
okay. As she sat bored on her bed, she decided to scroll through her camera roll. Memories before she had become locked inside the cage that was her own home, along with the rest of the nation. A flash of royal blue struck her eye. Ah, yes, her choir dress. Those dresses had come all the way from America. Despite them being unbearably warm under the spotlights and showing off every little curve and insecurity, they were beautiful. But it wasn't those concert dresses that saddened her. It was the people she was with while wearing them. Some of her closest friends were at that choir, people that brought so much joy to her life that now, that now she could only see through a screen. Had their latest concert only been a few months ago, it seemed like a lifetime away. Back then, singing was what had given her hope, joy, love. Now she had no motivation to do the things she loved most, for each day had become like the last. Wake up, do your work, don't leave your house, sleep. Where had that girl from just 2 months ago gone? The girl who had big dreams, the girl who was just beginning to get her confidence back, the girl whose biggest worry was whether she could hit that one note in the song she had been working on for months. It seems like now her life had just been ripped from underneath her. Now common annoyances such as school seemed like dreams, like luxuries. She thought back to her friends from that choir. How were they coping? Were they struggling? How long was it before they saw each other again? The uncertainty and fear was a common feeling amongst all, and that was how the sense of community was sparked between people who couldn't even leave their houses.
Well done, Niamh. I found that compelling. You really drew me. I felt really drawn into that. And again, I'm kind of curious about what happens. You know, I want to know the rest of the story, and really good writing is like that. Good writing kind of draws you in, and you want to find out what happened next. And isn't it interesting, folks, as you hear, you know, you heard Niamh and you heard Alaska, very different voices. And that's what I mean about every single person has a different voice as they write. What about Sky? Thank you very much, Niamh. That was wonderful. Keep writing. What about Sky? Hello, can you hear me, Sky?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Looking forward to hearing what you've written. I was reading a little bit. It looks good. Let us hear it.
Thank you. When I was 13, I remember being one of 3 people to come up with the sophisticated term stabby robot after being at the filming of Robot Wars. I am neither inclined to robotics or anything in the realm of engineering. In fact, I was on the verge of failing physics year after year. My friends have always discouraged me in a kind of patronizing tone, suggesting that I put myself out of myself-induced misery by just dropping the subject. After all, I can imagine that hearing me complain and having to console me on a weekly basis can't have been much fun after the novelty wore off. I only kept at it to prove them wrong, and because I was too protective of my fragile ego. I've never been very good with robots. When we were doing B-bots in primary school, mine was always the one that went the wrong way because I kept confusing lefts and rights and ended up crashing into a wall or another bot. So the only reason I ever went was because the small amount of fear of missing out, and also because I wanted to see how the filming of a show worked, and how the audience members and things like Pointless actually worked. It was all this glamorous mystery to me, see? I didn't have a TV at home, so before swim training I would sit mesmerized by the limited 3 channels of the center complimentary, that's supposed to say TV, and watched enraptured. And then I would get yelled at for being late and be told to do push-ups, which I still can't do.
Great. Well done, Sky. You know what I really enjoyed about that? There's something about the way you wrote that. I felt I was there. You know, I felt I was at that recording of that. You know, there was something the way you painted a picture there, which I felt that I was part of being with you there, and that's a really good, effective thing to do when you're writing. So well done.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
I think we've time. I'd love to hear more, but I think we've only time for one more. And it's Morgan Shuttleworth here. I know Morgan. How you doing?
Good. Tony, yourself?
I'm very well, thank you. So just so people know, Morgan played my big brother in Paperboy 2018. So that was wonderful, and he was great. Good to see you here, Morgan. Yeah, I was having a wee look through the chat, and I saw your name and I saw what you're writing. So look forward to hearing this. So just share it with us.
Sundays were always spent at my granny's flat, deep in the unknown realms of Belfast, far away from where we lived in the middle of nowhere. This particular Sunday, I'd just got the new Doctor Who magazine, with a toy included. This week's was the best in my young 10-year-old eyes, and the worst in my grand's. A green Dalek filled with slime. Not a minute after I'd improved the living room walls with some of the slime, had she confiscated it like some raging headmistress, to be put in the top shelf with the company of her finest china, never to be seen again.
Great. I love the Doctor Who references there, Morgan, as you might expect. That's good. That's a grandmother one, and it's interesting where you went with that. You know, it sounds to me like you just let it flow. So well done. Okay, look, I know we're just in our, but I'm just gonna take. Let me see. There are 3 more hands up very quickly. I'll just take these final 3. Thanks, Morgan. Take care. So it will take.
Cheers.
It will take Siberin, Sam, and Hepzibah. Okay, and Ellie. Very quickly, let's hear these 4. I think we're okay to go over a little bit in time, but I would love to hear what you've written. So let's hear. How do you say your name? Siberin?
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me?
How you doing?
Yeah. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm enjoying all this wonderful writing.
Yeah, good. It's pronounced. Yeah, you're correct. Sebron. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, good.
I'm surprised you got it right. Not many people do. Yeah. Right. I'll get here.
Go ahead,
okay.
Sebron. Yeah.
I loved that night. It felt so pure. The concert was just absolutely insane. Maybe I didn't like it. Maybe I'm just pretending I liked it to make sure Mum feels okay and happy that I enjoyed it. I'm the only person who knows the truth. I guess we are going to keep it that way. It doesn't have to be that any other way. I'm happy and that's all that matters. Maybe I did like it. Maybe I liked it and my head is just playing tricks on me. I'm not really sure.
Well done, Sabrin. I kind of felt that was very, almost like we got to know your personality in, in like 30 seconds there.
Yeah.
And so that to me, that is your voice.
Okay.
When you do it, when you try to write like that really authentically, we sort of get to know you get to know the writer when they're writing with their true voice. So well done.
Thank you very much.
Good for you. Okay, thank you. And Sam. Oh, Sam Gibson. Hi, Sam. How you doing?
Hi.
Good.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. So just for people who don't know, Sam is my more talented former self, as I always say, who played Tony in Paperboy, both 2018, 2019. Very talented young man. So yeah, and I spotted you were writing there, Sam. So I thought, oh yes, and of course he can write as well, multi-talented. So okay,
yeah.
let's hear what you're grandmother too.
Yeah, it's quite long.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that okay?
That's good.
Okay, it's the Fermanagh granny I told you about.
Ah, yes, you told me about her. That's right.
Okay. Right from my earliest memories, I can always remember my grandmother, a great hunk of a woman, born and bred in Fermanagh, and one of the most interesting people I've ever met. The memory that strikes me most takes me back to when I was very young, 5 or 6 years old. Myself and my family had taken a holiday to the beautiful town of St. Wolfgang in Austria. We had, of course, asked her if she would join us, but sadly she had turned us down. "Someone needs to muck out the ponies," she exclaimed rather loudly from her usual perch, spread out on the old sofa with her demon dog, inappropriately named Cuddles. It was a rather misleading name, as I would later find Cuddles did not in fact like to cuddle. Quite the opposite, actually, as a few scars still remain. Even so, we set off anyway, and soon had arrived in Austria. The familiar process of the car hire, the scenic drive to the apartment, and the view of the lake. We soon arrived at the apartment, a homely and quiet place overlooking the lake. However, as we drew nearer to the house, we noticed something odd. A set of keys in the door, which had been left ajar. Something was not right, I told myself. Had we been broken into? Was the holiday over before it had begun? More importantly, had the robbers decided to steal the DVD of Mamma Mia, the only video entertainment in the house? We made our way cautiously into the house, wary of threats of DVD stealers. I slowly peeked my head around the corner of the bedroom, prying open the door. And as I peeked my head around the corner, I was astounded at what I saw. A body lying on the bed. As I looked closer, I made the shocking discovery of who was on my bed. My grandmother, sleeping there in front of me. What was she doing here, 1,000 miles away from her perch in Fermanagh? That's it.
Well done, Sam. That was like the first chapter. That was like the first chapter that's going to draw you into the book of what happens next. You're kind of setting that up for a novel, and again, that's what I like about that. It kind of draws you in as well. And actually, you did. It's interesting too. People remember writing that engages with your emotions, and that can be a sad piece of writing, but it can be humor. And the way you talked about Cuddles. That to me, that's kind of a memorable thing there, because that's funny and it makes you laugh. So well done, that was brilliant. So you did it writing as well. That's great.
Thanks.
Take care. All the best.
Bye, Tony.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, Hepzibah. Hello. How are you doing?
Hi. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So, which would you like to go ahead and share your writing for us, please?
Sure. My grandmother was a beautiful woman. She shone from the inside. When I was a child, she used to bake for us and take us to adventure parks and sing in the evenings. Sometimes we would go into the kitchen and she would be dancing around the countertops, singing and twirling to whatever was on the radio. She was one of those dependable people that always knew what you needed to hear. She was trendy as well. She wore jeans and taught me and my brother to do French plats. Once she took us to the beach and told us about all the different types of rocks that had been there for thousands of years. But she was our real rock. And then one day she was gone, and the earth's most beautiful and caring and shining creation was ripped from this world and taken to another. Her heart, which had beaten for all of us since the beginning of time, it seemed, ceased its metronomic pulse and crumbled to dust. After the cremation, we took her ashes to that beach, and they joined the depths of endless sea, perhaps to one day join those beautiful fossils and rocks, because she really was our rock.
Oh, that was beautiful, Hepzibah. I really appreciated that. That was beautiful writing, and really a bit like what I was saying with Sam there. Really, if you're moved emotionally by writing, you'll remember it. And I was moved there. And you know what's interesting? I always find this when people talk to me about my books. People often relate in writing to something it reminds them of. It may not be what you intended, but if they relate to it in some way. So when you were writing there about your your grandmother, I was thinking of when my grandmother passed away and what that felt like. So I connect. There was a real connection there. So that's again a sign of good writing. So well done.
Thank
Keep
you.
writing. Keep writing. Cool. So I think I said I would take one more, and I think it was Ellie East. Hello, Ellie.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. So Ellie, would you like to share your writing with us?
Yes. Newspapers are pretty, full of information and noise. Newspapers are so loud without making a sound. They shout and scream, begging for our attention, craving to be noticed. Stories fighting to stand out and be heard among the rabble. Newspapers, so small, so powerful. Insignificant, yet they control our perception of the reality of the world outside of the little bubbles we live in. Powerful, grand, important, but only for a day. Then they are replaced, thrown aside, out of use now. And they are no longer breaking news of today, but they are records. The world's diary. To be looked back on by children years in the future when the pages have yellowed and curled so they can learn about what once was. Newspapers are mayflies. They live for one day, then become memories. Just another memory, vaguely in the back of our minds, sleeping unnoticed and less of any importance. Newspapers, loud, controlling, important. Newspapers, left unattended on train seats, a cheap umbrella on a rainy day. The breaking news of yesterday used to soak up the urine of the family guinea pig. Newspapers, important and insignificant.
Well done, Ellie. Do you know what I liked about that? I love writing where something inanimate becomes a character, and that's what you did there when you were writing about the newspapers. The newspaper became a character. One of my favorite books is called Bridge Over the Drina, and it's written by a Bosnian writer, and the main character in the book for me is the bridge. And the bridge almost tells the story. And it's interesting the way you read that, what you've written there, the newspaper is the character. That, to me, that was powerful writing. Great to hear it. Thanks for sharing. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you know, I could listen to these for another hour, but I think we'll have to finish very soon. So thank you for sharing those. As I said, we have a record of all of these lovely pieces of writing, and BYMT, I'm sure, will want to just check with you that it's okay. I think the idea is they might want to sort of compile these in some ways as sort of one of the things that you've produced today, because these are just beautiful, these pieces of writing that you've done today. And think about that. You did that in 12 minutes. Think of what you heard there from each other. In 12 minutes, those really good pieces of writing, and every one of them was distinctive and different. So you were finding your own voice as you were doing that. So well done. And I'd encourage you to do that sort of exercise again. Give yourself 30 minutes. And then you might find something you really like. You might, like, some of those sounded like they were the beginning of something. Then you might want to expand on it and write a little bit more. It might be a short story. Who knows? It might be at the beginning of a book or a memoir, that sort of thing. Okay, so I think probably we should finish by 1:15. We've just about another 4.5 minutes. When I said I would take some questions at the end, and I'm just looking at the Q&A here. Nico Shaw says, which one was harder to adapt to stage, Paperboy or Breadboy? Yes, and yeah. So, well, I think it's quite similar in a way. I think the story in Paper, we've actually been working on the Breadboy, for a wee while now. And actually what I've done with Breadboy is I've actually written what we're calling the missing chapter, between Breadboy and the next group, because it relates to one part of the story of Breadboy, which is going to be a major feature in the musical, which is our school production of West Side Story. So actually what's been different about Breadboy is I've actually written an extra chapter, especially for to be used in sort of the creative process of the musical. And I really enjoyed that. So that's different. Let me see then. Iona. Oh, hi, Iona. How are you? Iona Holt. Lovely to see you. Last time I saw you was at, oh yeah, you were at auditions, and I saw you in Let It Snow in London. Was it strange seeing your life play out on the stage? I have to be honest, Iona, every time from the first rehearsal, when I saw Sam Gibson playing me in a rehearsal room, until the very last performance, I still couldn't quite get used to it. It is the most surreal experience seeing your life and your family and your friends and your granny and your girlfriend all appearing on the stage. It is a bizarre experience. Stella Stevens, I want to be an actress when I'm older, but I do have an interest in one day maybe writing a novel, some poetry or screenwriting. How do you think I would go about this? Well, Stella, I would say what I said earlier, develop your writing habit, and you know, maybe you wrote a little bit there today, and maybe just build on that. And I think then you start to find your voice and it starts to flow. Once it feels like it flows, I think that's a good sign that you're maybe going in the direction of finding your own voice that you want to be. Kirsty Spreadby says, who inspired you to be a writer? Gosh, I suppose it probably was my tutor on that Open University course, who actually, she's called Sheila Toldy. She actually is a novelist herself. And I suppose she inspired me simply because she encouraged me. So I didn't go in having this to be inspired by this, you know, great famous writer, but she was just someone who I got to know, and she encouraged me and she built my confidence. And I think she probably inspired me. And I appeared at a literature festival with her a few years ago, and I told her that on the stage. Let me see. Hilary says, do you think it's easier to write a story from your own experience? Can you write someone else's story? Well, no, I think you can do both. I think it's probably easier to find your own voice when you're writing your own story. But I think, I mean, there's some people that I'm really interested in writing their story because their story is so fascinating, but it's usually because I connect with it in some way. There's something about their life inspires me, or I think it's really interesting, or maybe it's a story that has not been heard. Charlotte Cleary, who are some of your favorite authors? I like, Ivo Andrich is the guy who wrote Bridge Over the Drina. I like Salman Rushdie. In terms of, I'm reading Louis de Bernier at the minute, Birds Without Wings. I'm enjoying that one. I've read, I think that's the third of his books I read. I like authors actually who write about places different from where I come from. So I love some Irish authors, but I don't read a lot of Irish literature. I'm interested in places, people from India and the Middle East and Africa, places like that. I'm interested in stories for there. Ellie East, how do you develop a plot for a story? Yeah, well, actually, there is a structure to a good story, and so I actually do plot it out, and I would use like post-it notes, and you know, I talk about the rise and fall of the story arc, the various levels of conflict and the resolution of conflict that come into a good story. You know, there are certain sort of long-standing structures of stories, so I do try to follow those when I'm writing a fictional story. Have you ever, LV and Square, have you ever abandoned a story, and why? I've never actually abandoned anything where I've chucked it out and said, no, I'm not going to write that. There's some stories I've left. I mean, when I did that creative writing course 12 years ago, I actually had it started a novel, and I still want to write that novel, but I think I've written 9 chapters and I haven't gone back to it for maybe, I haven't gone near it for about 8 years. So that has happened to me. Who's your favorite author? Probably Salman Rushdie. Jay Granger, should I be referencing songs or names when writing with copyright in mind, or should I simply write and worry about that afterwards? Well, I would worry, yeah, I think worry about it afterwards. There are sort of legal things. Some of my books reference some songs, but they go through the publisher's solicitor where they check things like that. I think there's a limited number of words in a song that you're allowed to use. If you start to quote the whole song, then I think it becomes a copyright issue. Christine Simone, why do some writers choose to self-publish over sending their works out to other publishers? What are the pros and cons? I think it's really interesting. I mean, it used to be many years ago, it was publishing your own work was called vanity publishing. It was if, you know, you couldn't get a proper publisher. So if you were vain enough, you published it and wealthy enough, you published it yourself. But actually that's not the case now. There's lots of really good self-published books, and a lot of mainstream authors now publish their own books. And with technology, that's completely possible. So it depends what you want to achieve. I think when you're publishing with a publisher, you're part of their kind of PR machine, marketing machine. Their distribution is really important. You know, that they make sure your book is in the shop. Although in some ways, in terms of that PR and marketing, most authors, you have to do it yourself nowadays. You have to be into social media. You know, I do a lot of promotion of my stuff on my social media, and myself, my publishers don't do that. So yeah, I would still, my first choice would be to go towards publishing a publisher, particularly if I wanted a really successful international release. But if there was something really important to me that I wanted to say, and I couldn't find a publisher, I would self-publish. I have a little publishing company called So It Is, and I published my last book, Belfast Gate, in 2019 in it myself, because I didn't want to wait for years. It was a novel of its time. I wanted it to be published last year, so I published it myself. Arthur Craner, how easy was it for you to get your stories published? Was there any difficulties, and how did it make you feel? Well, I told you the story at the start, Arthur. You know how I was really surprised, because I expected a lot more rejections than I got. I think I was very lucky. They told me they found my manuscript for Paperboy in the slush pile, which is the name publishers give to unsolicited manuscripts. So it is tough, and if you can't get published yourself with a publisher, it's good to try to find a literary agent. I now have a literary agent who tries to sell my books to a publisher for me, and they're the experts in that. So and it is difficult, especially if you get rejections. When you get rejections, it feels very personal. But every successful writer has had many rejections, so it's important just to try to manage that and not let it knock your confidence too much. Okay. Have you ever thought about writing a screenplay? Says Sam. I actually have. I've written a screenplay. So my latest book is called Belfast Gate, and I wrote it originally as a screenplay. So I have it as a screenplay and a novel. And I when I write, I do think quite visually, sort of cinematically in a way. So I am interested in screenplays, and in the Paperboy movie, they've involved me a little bit in the script. Asked for my input a little bit in the script and things like that. So I've learnt about screenplay writing, which is a different style of writing than writing prose. Okay, I think that's all we have time for. We've gone over about 20 minutes. I know there's lots of really nice questions here, but I don't want to take up any longer of your time. It's been really lovely to spend this time with you this afternoon. I've really enjoyed it. And I wish you all the best with your writing. Remember those 3 tips: develop a writing habit, postpone perfection, and find your voice. That's all from me for now. Thanks for joining me at this BYMT Talks webinar, and all the best with your writing in the future. Bye for now.